This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 296, Linux for Everyone. Welcome to Talking Drupal. I'm Stephen Cross, and joining us today is Jason Evangelho to talk to us about his journey to Linux and the community he's building around it. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, how you doing?
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Jason is the founder of Linux for Everyone, which is a content and community promoting the use of Linux. He's an ex-AMD. Ex-AMD what?
I did marketing for the Radeon Technologies group over there for about a year, and that was quite a ride. We launched Vega and did a whole just bunch of crazy stuff. That's a different world, man. It was something else, but a good experience.
He's also an amateur songwriter. He's a tech journalist at Forbes since 2012, and he moved from America to Croatia in 2017.
Indeed.
So, been waiting to get you on the show for a long time. Glad you're finally here.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me and being patient. I know you started asking about 6 months ago. So.
Yeah. I think it was longer than that, but that's good enough.
It probably was.
So for our listeners, we started doing about 3 months ago, guest hosts that come with us for 4 weeks. And today we have joining us Fatima Hillard joining us. She's a developer programs engineer at Pantheon, where she works in developer relations. She's known as Sugar Overflow on the internet. You can find her on Drupal.org there. She's a former lead of the Drupal Diversity Inclusion Team, and she's an active member of the Drupal community, speaking, organizing sprints, and helping out first-time contributors. Fatima, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Fatima's doing 4 weeks like the other guest hosts have done. She's splitting hers up, doing 2 now, and then doing 2 more weeks in a month. So we're super glad to have you here.
Thank you.
So Fatima, as you know, in the show, we start off by just asking everyone what's new this week with you, and what's new with you this week?
Well, I had a friend visiting last week. Thank you, vaccinations. And it was definitely what I needed to get outside and eat some good food and take care of myself again. And so I'm just getting back from a very nice warm week and refilled.
That's great. And to remind us, are you living in San
Berkeley,
Diego?
California.
Berkeley. Okay. All right. So we've got the West Coast covered, the East Coast, and we have Croatia covered today. So yeah, we've gone everywhere. So also welcome back. And a regular on the show is John Picozzi. He is back from vacation. What's new, John?
I'm confused. Have we finally converted to a full Linux podcast?
Yes.
I missed 2 episodes, and now all of a sudden it's all Linux all the time.
My plan is working already. So
we'll be discussing the name change at the end of the show. Talking
Drupal. I would accept Drupal for everyone.
This is what I get for going on vacation. No, I went on vacation. It was great. I'd never been to Delaware before. Went down to the Delaware shore, and it was lovely. I would recommend it highly.
And you got some warm weather there last week too, didn't you?
Yeah, the weather was great. It was in the mid 70s every day, except one day where it got into the mid 80s, which is definitely a beach day. And yeah, it was lovely.
Good for you. And you stayed away from your computer, I hope.
Yeah, I did. It's funny. I brought a book down to read and brought my laptop just in case anything went haywire, and did not touch either of them until the day we left. So
nice.
So you didn't touch the book either?
No. Didn't. Actually, it was funny. I put it in my bag when packing and was like, oh, I'll have time to read this while I'm down there. And then as I was packing to go home, I opened my bag to put some stuff in it. And I was like, oh yeah, I brought this book.
Well, I guess it's not so easy to read when you get 2 kids running around, 2 young kids, right?
Yeah, we were actually with friends. So there were 5 kids total, 4 adults.
Okay. Wow. Good for you. Well, welcome back. Also joining us, as usual, is Nick Laughlin. Nick, what's new with you this week?
Not too much this week. I was doing some stuff over the weekend, spring cleaning, painting the basement, and just trying to freshen up a little bit around the house. You know, we're also mostly fully vaccinated in this house, so we're looking forward to kind of getting back out. And we figured one of the last kind of cooped up weekends we'd clean up. Maybe we should have done that 6 months ago or a year ago, but it was a productive weekend.
So Jason, as our guest this week, what is new with you this week?
Honestly, I don't have any concept of weeks or days anymore. In the before times, I did, but now time has lost all meaning. I can tell you that recently, my wife and I bought actual concert tickets.
Wow.
And that's something that, you know, we did 5 or 12 times per year, is went to see our favorite bands all around Europe. And so we got, in fact, I think this week or last week, we got the tickets in hand to see Foo Fighters on June 6, 2022 in Berlin.
Wow.
And a few days ago, I got my first stab. So that was a nice accomplishment. You know, it felt good to get that halfway done finally.
I think I see a Foo Fighters poster behind you. Is that what that
Oh
is?
yeah. That's the that's their poster from Pula Arena, which is one of the last standing Roman arenas in Croatia, and they performed inside of it, and it was magical. It was just legendary. It was incredible.
Yeah, I heard they put on a good show. So
it really is. It's like, it sounds like an exaggeration, but it is life-changing to see the Foo Fighters in concert. There's no other energy like that I've ever experienced.
Okay. Hey, I'm gonna have to check out their tour in the US. I wonder if they're coming to Fenway Park again this year.
Probably.
Funny, I just put a reminder in to look into Zach Brown at Fenway Park. I heard an ad a couple of weeks ago that they were coming to Fenway, and the last show I saw at Fenway, I think, was the poster I have on my wall, which was Dave Matthews in 2006. So
that must have been equally amazing, I would assume.
As a huge Dave Matthews fan, yes, it was.
Yeah,
the best experience.
I can't imagine Fenway's a great place for acoustics, though. That music bouncing off the. Were their backs to the wall? To the Green Monster?
So the way they set it up is like the Green Monster is they basically make like an angle with the stage and the Green Monster. So the acoustics are more bouncing off the wall into the crowd. All right. You know, not a sound engineer, so I don't know exactly what the best acoustics would be, but it was fine. It was enjoyable.
So new for me this week. It was a pretty exciting week for me in that it's the first show, the last episode 295, that I did not produce. Nick did all the post-production. So Nick, you did a great job. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
We're shifting around some. What's that, Nick?
Any complaints can now be directed at me for production issues.
Yeah, we did it jointly the week before, and I think it took us 4 hours, right?
Yeah, it was a lot more time.
3 hours one night and 1 hour the next day. So yeah, but that was just the learning curve. So we're shifting around.
Well, hats off to you, Nick.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
And by the way, all Linux editing. Okay. So
what do you use?
For the editing or for Linux? I'm on
for the editing. For the editing,
I'm on Ubuntu. So I use Kdenlive for the video, Audacity, and Ophonic for audio.
that is my holy trinity. Kdenlive, Ophonic, and Audacity. That's awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
And then I think we used Kid3 for some podcast tagging.
Yep. Suddenly realizing that I am swimming at the very, 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 very deep end of the Linux swimming pool in this show.
How deep? Gentoo?
Like literally could be. It's mid forehead right now. I'm gonna try to get it just so my nose is above water.
So Jason, for your reference, as you know, I'm a Linux user, switched about the same time you did. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Oh,
Nick is a longtime Linux user.
Yeah.
Like
been on
maybe the
Linux for
original
8
Linux
years.
user.
Yeah, no, I switched actually, I think 2 weeks before we started the podcast.
Oh, okay.
I was looking to
About
buy a
8
new
years
computer. Yeah, I was looking to buy a new computer, and I was doing all my work. I was looking at renting a server that I could SSH into to do all my work, because all my work was on Linux, like all my clients. And then I was like, and then I had a revelation. I was like, wait, why would I buy a Windows computer and then SSH into a Linux computer to do my work? Why don't I just install Linux on the computer that I have and use that? And then, so I tried it for a couple of weeks and then never looked back.
And Fatima, Mac, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I used to use Linux a couple years back. Switched over to Mac, company provided laptop. So
yeah, there you go. Right. And John is a Mac guy as well.
I use Mac for music production. I don't have any shame about that. I think that Linux is getting there though with Pipewire. I think that it's going to be time to revisit Linux for music production very, very soon, which is going to be great.
It's interesting. So let's move on to our topic for the day. Jason's with us. As I mentioned before, when I switched to Linux, which I think was about 4 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago, I was just fed up. As a Drupal developer, I just wanted to experiment with something new. So I bought a System 76, one of their little, what's it called? Their little boxes. Meerkat. That you don't need a keyboard or mouse. You just kind of plug it in. And I bought it. I put it to the side of me. And then I just kind of tinker with it. I had never really used Linux at all. And I was tinkering with it. Within a month, I had like moved my Mac to the side, and now the Meerkat was in front of me, and I was using it for day-to-day work. And then within a few months, I just switched everything over. I just went cold turkey and switched everything over from Mac to Linux. And shortly after I did that, I think maybe 6 months later, as I'm like looking up articles online, I run into this guy writing on Forbes, and he had posted this article about switching over to Linux. And Jason, you'd been at Forbes for I think 9 years, and during that time writing basically about gaming and Windows stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, graphics card reviews, Windows gaming, yep. Nintendo Switch stuff, 3DS stuff, Yeah.
So 6 years into your time over at Forbes, you then post this article in July of 2018 that says it was titled "Ditching Windows: 2 Weeks with Ubuntu on Linux on a Dell XPS." That was the title. I think that was your first article.
That was my first Linux article. Yeah.
So you went all this time as a Windows guy. Now you're kind of known as this Linux guy in the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange because I can't escape it. I mean, even if I wanted to escape it, not that I do want to, but it's difficult having just one label slapped on anyone, right? And everyone likes to be diverse and likes to have many different interests. But, if I post something about how I just adored the new Foo Fighters video, it just crickets, But if I share a screenshot of my my themed Pop! OS installation with Dracula, the Dracula theme on everything, it's like 150 retweets. But it's
interesting.
It seemed to happen very quickly. The Twitter followers ramped up, and at the time when about a month or so after I had written that initial article, after I had switched to Linux, I thought, I'm going to keep writing about this because it seemed like a way to kind of document my journey. I was very transparent and upfront about the fact that I'm a total Linux noob. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sharing these cool discoveries with you guys. I'm giving you my impressions, and let's just go with it. And
I mean, when did it kind of click that it was going to take off for you? Because I imagine that first article was just an article to write. You didn't expect it to change the course of your life.
No, That's
So
very, very well put. Yeah, and it totally did, and I didn't expect it to at all. It was about probably 2 months later.
oh, really?
It just consumed me. And I say that in a very positive way. I just threw myself down into that rabbit hole, and everything that I wrote, it was, here's my impression of the deepen installer. I don't know what installer should look like. Let's just talk about impressions and give people, an overview of what they can expect from the different installers out there in Linux distros. And it seemed like everything I wrote seemed to really resonate with people. And it was surprising because I thought that it was career suicide in a way to turn 6 years of being, the tech guy, the guy who reviewed GPUs, the guy who covered Windows gaming, to switch to Linux 6 years into writing at Forbes. But I was shocked at how I actually got more eyeballs on the Linux content than I did for anything else. And I've got the stats to prove it. It's crazy. I would write about Deepin, 350,000 views. I had never seen any kind of traffic like that. And it just turned out to be the perfect storm of, for better or for worse. Forbes at the time had very good search rankings with Google. And so, and then maybe it was also a lack of content the way that I was writing it, maybe, but it was just a perfect storm. And I decided, okay, this is what I'm doing now. I'm going to professionally write about Linux. And then I think several months after that, Jupiter Broadcasting approached me, Chris and Joe Resington, and they were like, we're thinking about doing a show called Choose Linux, and we'd like you to co-host it. And I said, okay, let's go. And that was how the Linux podcast journey started. And so, but I will ramble if you guys don't stop me. You know that, right? Because I'm a podcaster.
So I had a couple of follow-up questions there. One is, or points to make. One is that what was unique at the time, and I think still holds true today, is that your voice in the Linux world is coming from a different perspective than most out there. Usually it's Linux people writing about Linux, and they usually really kind of tech nerds that are producing content, and it doesn't hit the right tone where your content was coming from like an average person who is obviously computer savvy and a technical writer, but you had a different spin on looking at Linux, really coming from the novice, but you could write about it in a way that people could consume the content and understand it and be enthusiastic about it.
Thanks for that. I mean, that wasn't necessarily intentional. It was just the way that I've always written stuff. But once I realized that was really resonating with people, I really dug into that. And I think that I don't have any numbers to show you, but it feels like a whole lot of people in the last couple of years decided to try Linux because of something that I had written over at Forbes. So that was really, really satisfying and, rewarding.
So as one of, Sarah's used Linux in the past, and I dabble on Linux. I have a Stephen Cross provided ThinkPad here that's running Linux that I touch every couple of months. Anyway, the phrase Linux for everyone is a pretty bold statement. It's lofty in its goals. What is Linux for everyone all about?
Do you mean kind of what's behind the name? What am I?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when somebody sees Linux for everyone, what should they expect to get out of that?
That's a really good question. It kind of is an extension. Well, you should. You're the one who asked it, so you get the credit. I think it's an extension of that approachable and conversational type of writing that I did at Forbes. It's not necessarily saying that Linux is for everyone, although I believe it could be. But really the main point of it, and the way that I wanted to frame everything, is that, look, we don't have to use desktop Linux and use the terminal all day long. We don't have to, use IRC to troubleshoot things. We don't have to compile a kernel. We don't have to compile our drivers. We don't have to be so in the weeds and so technical, like Stephen was saying. And it should be fun. It should be like something that we're always discovering and learning and enjoying. And the other side of that is I am actively trying with my community to, there's probably some brilliant phrases about, the community that rises up around you is sort of a reflection of you. And what I'm trying to do is show people that we don't have to be like tribalistic about the aspects of Linux that we like. We don't have to be toxic and be gatekeeping everything that, like if you want to check out Ubuntu, but you also want to use Discord and you want to boot into Windows for that game or two that you need to play, that you want to play, I'm not going to judge you. Enjoy it. Come back to Linux for the things that Linux excels at and that you enjoy. Use the best tool for you. And so that is Linux for everyone, I guess, in a nutshell, is accessible, conversational, welcoming Linux community.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, right, you're basically saying that you want people to understand that you want to make Linux more accessible to everyone, and kind of remove the stigma of it just being an OS for nerds to code things.
Yes, and I'm glad you used that word stigma, because that's a big thing in my just daily discussions with people, especially in YouTube comments. But I will come across people every day who still honestly think, you can't game on Linux. You have to use the command line to be able to use the operating system. And there are these stigmas that people have been living with and accepting that just simply aren't true anymore. And I don't know, I'm not here to answer why that is, but at least I can try to educate people and show them, not just tell them, but show them that, those things aren't true anymore. And Linux is like graceful now, and it's fast and it's easy, depending on, depending on what you're using, but
yeah, depending on the distribution. So I think that's a pretty good segue. Have you looked into Proton at all? Speaking of gaming on Linux.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a whole thing that I did. Oh, you know what, Nick? I'm so glad you brought that up, actually, because I think that Proton was one of the catalysts for me switching over to Linux and deciding to cover it at Forbes all the time. I think I was lucky enough to be 3 months into my Linux journey when Valve came out and they're like, hey, guess what, guys? You can play like 6,000 Windows only games now right in Steam. Just click install and play. And I was just like, what? So I covered that.
Could you briefly explain what Proton is?
Yeah,
for our listeners that don't know.
Yeah. So Proton.
I'll let you. No, you go. I talk too much. No, you go. You go.
Okay, so Proton is a compatibility layer that Steam, or Valve rather, put out for Windows games. So it's basically you right-click on the game that you have that you can only play on Windows, and you say, "Hey, use Proton with this," and then you can use it on Steam. So I'm kind of ashamed to say that I didn't discover this until about 4 months ago. I just, in my mind, even as a heavy Linux user, in my mind, I just wrote off a bunch of games. And I'd seen some stuff about Proton before, but didn't know what it was. And then I right-clicked on a game and saw like you can choose Proton versions, and I dug into it. And I mean, 3 months ago, I bought Doom 2016, which is a Windows-only game, and I was able to play through it, and it was pretty flawless. I discovered, the biggest bug I found is I have a wireless headset, if I walk away from my computer while using Proton, the audio is garbled for the rest of the session. But as long as I keep my headset near the computer, it's pretty flawless. So basically it's a way for you to play Windows games on Linux with just, an invisible compatibility layer.
Yeah. And I think, so there's two things I wanted to add to that, if you don't mind. Sure. Code Weavers deserves a massive amount of credit for Proton. And they made that very clear when I interviewed them last year. I don't know. Like I said, I have no concept of time. But it was, it was all of their work on Wine that enabled the existence of Proton, and then Valve came along and just basically made it easy and awesome.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, don't feel ashamed that you didn't find out about it until 4 months ago, because Linux marketing is not the best. It's not the best.
That's true.
And so, like I said, I was talking about the stigmas earlier, and that's one of them is, people who are in the Linux ecosystem, in that bubble, still don't know much about, some don't know much about Proton, just because there's not enough people out there banging the drum about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a built-in way to play AAA games on Linux. I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful.
I didn't know about Proton either. And speaking about Linux marketing, we know that Linux for Everyone has an audio podcast and a YouTube channel, a newsletter, and a growing community. And I really love when you talked about, it's making it approachable and accessible for people that may have originally seen it as something that only the nerds can do, but like literally everyone should be able to do it, and we should make it welcoming and great for that. So as a young enterprise, where do you see Linux for Everyone going in the future?
Man,
what do you think is next? It sounds like sharing Proton with the world is next, but what else is?
I'll tell you, I don't. I hope this does not land the wrong way, but I would love to see Linux for Everyone become the Linus Tech Tips of Linux. Mm-hmm. I don't have the bandwidth or the time or the resources for that, but I would love to see that start growing, towards that goal. And that's obviously going to take a much, much bigger team and all of that. But I think it's got the bones for something, good foundation for something like that. That's what I'm picturing. Maybe not as YouTube heavy, maybe it's more of a mixture between, written content and videos and podcasts. But that's where I would love to see it in the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
Is really, my last name is Evangelho, which is Portuguese, which translates to gospel. So it's kind of my duty to,
There you go.
Share Linux
evangelism.
Not that there aren't a lot of other amazing people doing that. There's the Linux Experiment. There's Level 1 Techs. There's Destination Linux Network. There's so many. But yeah, that's the dream. That's the dream. Is I'm starting to do this full time right now, thanks to Tuxedo Computers, which is a wonderful story. And so now it's kind of just looking ahead and seeing what can we do now.
So what do you mean by thanks to Tuxedo Computers? Maybe you could talk about that a little bit.
Oh man, it's how much time do you want me to spend on it? Give me a.
Okay, give us the overview.
Because they're just like they're kind of the very end of the story. So okay. Long story short, and I've shared this publicly before, so I really don't. I'm not too concerned about it. Forbes has repeatedly cut the pay of its contributor network to disgusting levels, embarrassing levels, to where and in addition to that, something has happened behind the scenes where they don't have nearly the search algorithm power that they used to. And so no matter what we're writing over there, and I know a lot of contributors there in gaming and tech and every other category, no matter what we write, no matter how clickbaity we make the headlines, the traffic just isn't showing up. And so it basically disincentivized me to continue writing there because it was a waste of time. Even it would have been, even if the money wasn't there, it would have been nice to at least have the audience there. Okay, I'm still making a difference. I'm still reaching people, but that wasn't the case anymore. And then a website called voice.com came along, and they had a lot of former Forbes executives, and they were backed by Block One, who is a $4 billion crypto company. And so Block One gave voice.com $150 million, and they said, build the next great social network powered by cryptocurrency. And so Gordon Kelly over at Forbes recruited me to write there, and that was a dream come true, because it was literally write what you're passionate about and get paid really, really well, regardless of the traffic. We're going to make it worth your while, because we're going to pay you based on engagement. We're going to based on people leaving comments and talking to you, not on traffic. You're not going to write for an algorithm. You're going to write for people, right? 3 months into that, voice.com was like, hey guys, we're going to turn this into an NFT marketplace. Your contracts are going to end this month, and thank you. And we'll see you on the other side. So that happened. And then I was like, well, it's time to just get a real job, I guess. I don't know what I would go do, but kind of at the midnight hour, Tuxedo Computer stepped in and they said, look, we would like to talk to you about a long-term partnership where you'll help us make a little bit of content, you'll help us grow our community, and we will basically take any concerns that you have of finding advertisers and supporting yourself off the table.
Oh, wow.
And at the same time, they were like, we don't want you to change your content. You can still, talk about Dell and Lenovo and Slimbook and System 76. And that's what I've been doing for the last month that I've been sponsored by Tuxedo Computers, because it's just more of a partnership. It's more of, they came along and said, Linux for Everyone needs to continue. And, we think that you can help us build our brand, but also promote the entire ecosystem like you've been doing. So that was a complete win-win situation. I mean, no question, just an absolute win.
And
it's great when companies kind of step in and help support those types of voices. I mean, I've seen that with a few open source projects. It's always, better content for everyone, and people can make a living.
Mm-hmm.
As a guy that buys his computers from one store in the mall, can you?
What store?
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say
all
it.
All right.
Just think the color white.
Okay.
The fruit store, if you will.
Hey, dude, you know what? I've got 1,500 people in our Telegram group, and I guarantee you at least 300 of them use Macs.
So I guess if
like I said, I'm open to it.
I'm assuming the company you're talking about, they make Linux systems. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they make and manufacture Linux first, laptops and desktops.
Got it. Okay.
And they have a really cool hook in that with many of their laptops, you can get your logo, for example, your company logo, or even just some artwork that you're fond of. You can get that laser etched onto the laptop lid, as well as the super key, if you want. So I could have a Linux for Everyone logo as the super key, and they have the equipment to be able to completely custom print a keyboard. So you want Klingon on your Tuxedo Computers keyboard? Go for it.
Where were they a month and a half ago?
So that's really cool. And I keep telling them, like, you guys have to keep telling people about this nonstop, because it's way too awesome.
I just bought a new laptop about a month and a half ago.
Can you return it, Nick?
I can't do that. The support at that other company's been pretty good too, but that might have won me over.
The Klingon.
The
Klingon, yes.
The logo. I mean, I do enjoy Star Trek, but that's not my. I probably would not.
Okay.
My keyboard.
Federation logo as your super key. Done.
That'd be pretty cool.
Subtle, but effective, right?
I wonder if
you look at that every day and smile.
Yeah, maybe I can just order the key from them.
I don't
and just
know.
replace it.
I actually don't know. I think there's places where you can get custom keycaps like that.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Probably.
So one of the themes that I've been hearing is that, there's a stigma around Linux, and a lot of people don't realize how it could work for them. But there are a lot of people that use Linux, some of them because it's the best OS, for example, servers and things. I would guess the vast majority of servers on the internet are Linux. And other people just are open source advocates and try to avoid proprietary software where they can. Where do you kind of sit on that scale, and how do you kind of
oh man
make decisions around that?
This is a conversation that loses me a lot of Twitter followers, but a lot more Mastodon followers. I like to consider myself a pragmatist, and it's a tough question, because I am right now on one side of that way of thinking, but I'm sensing myself slowly crossing over to the other side. And right now, I believe that if there is an open source alternative to a proprietary commercial piece of software that is comparable, that is as good, then we should absolutely be using that. But if I don't know if I'm going to do this justice, but let's take Discord, for example. Okay. There is no alternative to Discord. There is no open source alternative. There are substitutes for it, like Matrix, the Matrix network, and applications like Element are really making great strides in catching up. But right now, there is no solution that matches Discord. And so when I invite, I will invite FOSS developers to our Discord to share their software with us. And I have a channel just for that on there. And there are people who get really, really angry about me doing that. And I see their point of view. I see that they see someone promoting Linux and doing Linux content as their job, and they think that you should be all in on their philosophy, right? Because they want to cheer for you, but you're not cheering for what they believe in. And that being said, the conversation that I had today with Dr. Louis Falcone, he runs GNU Health. Well, shoot, I'm sorry. It's like I said, it's a really tough question. I can tell you that in the last week, I have talked to Dr. Louis Falcone and Brian Fox, the creator of Bash. and both of them are very, very privacy-centric people. And both of them have very different views on FOSS versus commercial. But I have had my eyes opened a little bit in the last week or two about the dangers of letting these corporations have our data. I mean, that's an issue. But God, this is the toughest question I've ever been asked. I mean, I'm not firmly in one camp or the other. I guess there's not a perfect. I don't have a perfect answer to it. I mean, it's.
Welcome to Talking Drupal, where we ask the hard-hitting questions.
Wow.
Yeah, that might be the hardest hitting question we've ever asked. I mean, I agree. I mean, it's a spectrum. I'm definitely in the camp of I try to use as much open source as possible. But the truth is, there's things like Zoom. Zoom is probably my most hated program right now. I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but it's definitely anti-privacy. I mean, it's owned by the Chinese government, basically. But it's
if
also
the Zoom gods are listening, please don't shut our podcast.
but it's also the only video sharing, screen sharing software that reliably works on Linux right now. I mean, you
Discord,
can't that I
Discord.
Can you imagine having work meetings
Well-
on Discord? I would love that.
I mean,
I-
but Discord's also not open source, so it's the same. But I am going to try Discord
there
because
There it is.
there's the dilemma,
would-
right?
Can we all get to the
Yeah.
point where we're going to use and this is like the whole argument for Linux for everyone, right? Like we're going to use what works best for the situation or the person. And like, can we do that without selling our soul to like the proprietary software devil? Like I personally feel like we can, but I'm not a hardliner by any means.
I think, John, the solution it's a complicated solution, but it's there and it's achievable. I mean, kind of to Nick's point, I have tried to use Jitsi, which is a Zoom competitor, open source and pretty user friendly, but I have tried to use that and it's not reliable enough. And when I'm looking at a once in a lifetime interview, I have to have something that works. I have to have reliability. And if Jitsi's recording service, I show up to a meeting with someone and Jitsi's recording service just decides to be offline, or the servers are unstable, well, of course I'm going to go back to something like Zoom or Discord.
Plug that server back in.
Recently, I was using Lightworks to do video editing, which is not open source, but it does work well on Linux. However, Kdenlive recently stepped up their game with version 2004, and
it's so much nicer.
It's so much nicer, right? They've got the workflows, like the editing, the audio, the color, the different workflows. It's so much more stable. And so I went, yeah, absolutely. I will come back to this. I will use it. I will show people that I'm using it, and I will promote it because it has improved and it is worthy of that attention. But the other side of that is the solution that I was talking about is these developers cannot make products that are competitive to commercial software without funding.
Yeah.
It's not possible. And so we have to either be willing to accept that if a developer wants to charge us money for something, that's okay. And if
in open source.
Yes, in open source, yes. Yeah. If they want to charge us money for a FOSS piece of software, that's okay. They have that right. They deserve to make money off of their work. And if they're not asking for that, maybe we can, contribute to their Patreon or throw a tweet out there, or, ask people to start their GitHub, or, any number of ways to keep them funded and visible. That's, I guess, where I stand, I guess. Yeah.
So at the top of the show, we were talking a little bit, I think you mentioned a little bit about Linux marketing and how poor it is. I know on our show, probably maybe a couple of times a year, we focus on Linux on this. It's a Drupal podcast, not a Linux podcast, but Nick and I.
Oh, we're still Drupal. Good.
Yeah, we are. Nick and I throw it in every once in a while. We've had a couple of shows on Linux in the past, and we have seen some of our listeners switch over to Linux because of it.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's exciting to see that happen. But the market share of Linux is so small. It's like I looked the other day, it's still like 3% of desktop users. And maybe that's okay, right? Maybe it's okay to just have 3%. But I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on like what's holding it back from, especially in our world is we're developer world. I just, where I sit, I cannot imagine why any Drupal developer wouldn't use Linux. It just seems ridiculous to me that you would.
I've never understood that.
Okay, guys.
Oh man. Well, do you want to just wrap this up and start recording episode 297 so we can talk about that?
Exactly.
Do I have thoughts on that?
Well, clearly there's people like Fatima, companies, they provide Macs. In the organization I'm working for, they provided Macs, and I actually did a presentation to management and said, you know what, we're better off having Linux for developers, and here's why. And then they ended up listening to me and giving the developers a choice. You could either
That's
get a
awesome.
Mac or you could get Linux. And I just beyond
or you
that,
can run Linux on your Mac.
Or you could run Linux on your Mac.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but nobody wants to support that. No IT department wants to support.
Yeah, I know. That's a
something
nightmare.
like that.
That's a nightmare.
So what do you think is holding Linux back from getting more market share?
Oh my gosh. Well, for starters, I tried to create an entire organization just to address this issue called Make It Linux. And you can read our manifesto at makeitlinux.org. We haven't really had time to do much with it, but I think the foundation is there to do something good with it. There's so many ways. There's so many things. The thing, in my opinion, the thing that is holding Linux back, desktop Linux back, from wider adoption is the same thing that is like its best strength, which is choice. It's a double-edged sword. It's bittersweet. It's if there was only one or two distributions, Linux would have more market share, period. I do not doubt that for a second. If it was just Ubuntu and Manjaro, for example, that's it. Maybe it was just Ubuntu. I mean, that I don't want to live in that world necessarily, but there's only one Mac OS and there's only one Windows. And choice can be crippling to people. People will come into Linux for the first time and they won't understand, why are there all these different packages? Why are there snaps and flat packs and debs and RPMs, and which one do I use and which one's better? What if I have a flat pack and a deb on my Pop OS installation? Which one should I use? So again, I don't think there's a solution to that either. Tough questions. I think tough questions.
Yeah. So some hardware vendors have recently, and the one that jumps to me is Lenovo, has recently, a year ago, announced they were going to treat Linux as a first-class citizen and offer it on a percentage of their computers. In
a large percentage, all of their workstation PCs and laptops. Yeah,
and they've done that kind of. So what do you mean by?
I actually just a couple weeks ago released a video kind of updating people on that hardware initiative from Lenovo, with some thoughts directly from Mark Pearson, who is the Linux guy over there. And he admits that they planned global rollouts of this hardware, and that hasn't happened. They have planned to support more systems and models, and that hasn't happened. And I kind of get that, because it's a huge corporation and it takes forever. I worked at AMD, and so that's why I can sympathize with that, is I know it takes forever from idea to implementation at a place like Lenovo. But there are also situations like, if you go to Lenovo's web store right now and you look for a Carbon, what's the model number? Help me out.
X1?
Yeah, you look for a ThinkPad X1 Carbon, and you choose that with Windows, okay? It will ship the next day. If you choose that with Linux, identical hardware, it ships in 12 weeks or more.
Wow. It's crazy.
So are they treating Linux like a first-class citizen? You tell me.
And it's easier to install Linux than it is to install Windows. You don't need any keys. You don't need hardware keys, like serial keys or anything.
Like that delay. I'm picturing like one guy sitting in an office, and they stack up these computers that he's supposed to put a USB drive in and install Linux.
I know. Like, what is he?
That's what he's doing.
Is he installing Gentoo or something?
So that kind of rolls into my question, right? So Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one thing. The only thing we desperately need one big hardware vendor to roll into like a Walmart or a Best Buy. We should put the XPS 13 on shelves with Ubuntu.
And it'll be $100 cheaper, $150 cheaper without the licensing
like
costs.
they did with Chromebooks. That's how they sold Chromebooks, right?
Yeah. I think that's
kind of what
you guys have really tough questions.
That's kind of what I'm imagining. Right? I'm imagining like a warehouse full of those computers with Windows on them, and then being like, well, if we make the Linux one 12 weeks, people are going to buy these because we have them on shelves, right? But I guess the follow up to that question for me is like, how do like educational institutions, government agencies, and big business who are like buying thousands of Windows or Mac based computers play into this? Like, I imagine like if one major university said, hey, we're going to switch all of our computers to Linux, or, most of our computers to Linux where it makes sense. Like, I imagine that would kind of have a cascade effect in adoption uptick, right?
We've seen that happen in certain cities in Europe. And I apologize, I can't remember the exact places, but I do know that Artyom Zorin, actually, of Zorin OS, I think it was somewhere in Ireland where their entire government and school systems switched over to Zorin OS Education and Zorin OS, proper. And I know that's happened, or it's been discussed in places like Germany as well. But it's going to take a lot more than just a few counties or cities to make that impact. Right now, I can't tell you why that's not happening. I would think that they would save buckets of money by switching to Libre software, right? But maybe it's just they think there's a learning curve, or there's no one. Support. I don't know.
The illusion. Yeah, it's the illusion of no support. I mean, Microsoft supports Windows.
Yeah, maybe it's the stigmas. I mean, are there, if they install Ubuntu, I'm sure that there are, qualified professionals to support that. And, like with GNU Health, there are hospitals, large hospitals that are running on GNU Health now. And there are people in those communities that have formed businesses around installing it and supporting it. Independent of Dr. Falcone's organization, and he's like, go for it. Yes, absolutely. This is the right way to monetize open source software. But I don't know. I wish we knew more about those discussions that are happening at the government and school levels.
So for those discussions, for those people that feel hesitant, or maybe they're afraid, or maybe they're just not used to it, what would you say to them would be their best benefit? Like, what would be the top thing you would sell Linux to them on?
Oh man, just one thing?
You get to pick one thing.
Oh my gosh. I would say, what does PC stand for? You guys know.
Personal computer.
Personal computer.
Yes. Linux makes your PC personal again. That's how I would summarize all of that.
And where can I buy that t-shirt?
Whether that, oh my God, I need to make, hold on.
That should be a t-shirt.
Oh man, I need to make that t-shirt immediately.
I think you have your new marketing theme.
Yeah, that's okay. So, that basically means you can customize it. You can make it your own. You can sort of own the code or understand the code that's running on your machine. You have control over your privacy. And so, yeah, it's all that. It's making your PC personal again, because it's, let's be honest. I mean, at one point, maybe with Windows, you could personalize it, and now it's just,
But I can set my background picture.
Yay! You can set your background, but you can choose dark theme. Dark theme.
And I think the other thing, one thing that's lost on a lot of people is for the majority of users, who I would call light users of computers. They check their email, they open a spreadsheet, they edit a Word document. Like Ubuntu, out of the box does everything they need. Like I installed Ubuntu, I think 6 years ago on my mom's computer, and she didn't even realize that it wasn't Windows. Like I had to tell her like this button is where you open programs instead of the start button.
Wow.
And that was it. She just used it. Like
that's really cool.
I would say the only thing that was a little like took maybe a little bit of training was it was LibreOffice, and it was 5 years ago. So it was a little bit rougher than Excel.
Yeah.
It's still,
I don't know what it was
rougher,
like 5 years ago. It's still rough now, but
yeah, it's still rough, but she just did it for like basic bookkeeping, home budget, that kind of thing. So nothing,
here's another one
nothing
for you.
complex.
Linux, so easy your mom can use it.
that has to be a t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
And then on the back, by the way, I use Arch. But that's I mean, I'm pretty sure that the majority of your, let's say your traditional or average PC user is only using a browser. That's all they need their computer for, and Linux, pick a distribution. Every Linux distribution does that perfectly.
Except for once in a while, Firefox breaks YouTube for like a day.
Oh yeah.
Like
well,
YouTube just doesn't work on Firefox for a day. And then, there's some nightly update or something and it starts working again. But other than that, browsers are pretty, like even like in browser, like Teams works now on Chromium. So like everything's, on par.
So let's switch focus a little bit and talk about people who are considering switching, right? A couple weeks ago, maybe even last week, I saw a tweet from Kristen Pohl that said, I'm considering moving back to Linux after about 15 years on a MacBook Pro. Any Linux fans have any thoughts, advice? I've heard the UX isn't great on Linux right now. I'm most interested in performance, reliability, and usability. So my question around that is, what do you think the top 2 tips are for people who are considering switching? I know we're tip limiting you, but
no, that's okay. As far as the UX, I would say Elementary OS says hello. That US is delicious. It's beautiful. The top 2 tips for people switching is, number 1 is take your time. Take your time. Don't feel like you have to blast your Windows installation or your Mac OS installation. Use both until you are completely comfortable just, living on Linux as your daily driver. And if people are judging you for that, then just, block, mute, and move on, really. Take your time. And the other thing would be ask the community questions before you make the switch. Don't ask them, what distro should I use? I want to switch to Linux. What distro should I use, right? Tell them, I value your advice as an experienced Linux user. Here is what I'm looking for in my computing experience. What would you recommend? I am looking for, I want to do video production and I want to do gaming and I want kind of the same workflow as Windows. What would you recommend? And then I would take that information and give them a probably a recommendation that might not be what I'm using on my laptop right now, not being tribalistic about it and going, okay, I use Pop! OS on everything, but for you, you're probably going to want Kubuntu or I don't know, Garuda Linux or Manjaro KDE or, any number of things. So it's ask a lot of questions and experiment. And take your time. That's 3, but
that's fine. We'll allow it. Do you have questions or feedback? Reach out to us on Twitter at Talking Drupal. The Talking Drupal channel in Drupal Slack is also open, and you can email us always at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can get show updates by signing up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
If you're planning a Drupal camp, if you have one coming soon or one coming in the future and you want to let people know about it, you can promote it on Talking Drupal. You can learn more by going to talkingdrupal.com/camp promo.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choosing the Become a Patron button. And as always, patrons get the before and after show, Rocky.
Oh, no, just kidding.
Really makes
Now
you
they
think,
know
hey, what did I
concert-
say today?
What did I say before you guys said we were starting the show?
Become a patron and you can find out what you said.
Jason, it was great to have you on today. Thanks for taking some time to be with us. Is there
My
anything-
pleasure, man. I like I said, this was an awesome conversation, and you guys are also like, you move it along, for this many people in a virtual room, and we're only at like 1 hour and a couple minutes in, and I would expect that we'd be at 3 hours by now because we're all podcasters. But yeah, you guys run a tight ship, so kudos.
Yeah, we have day jobs that we have to get back to. That's the truth. Is there anything that you wanted to mention today that we didn't get to? Anything you want to talk about?
Oh gosh, no, not really. Other than I just want to stress the importance of being welcoming to people who are using Linux already and who are thinking about switching to Linux. If you embrace them and you show them that it's a welcoming community, they will be back for more. So be excellent to each other, says Bill and Ted.
That's great. How could people contact you if they wanted to reach you directly or learn more about the Linux for Everyone community?
We have, oh gosh, I don't know the URL, but if you go to Linux, the number 4, everyone, so Linux, the number 4, everyone.com, there is a tab called Social, and that will take you directly to links to our communities on Matrix and Discord and Telegram and Twitter and Mastodon. So those are all very accessible to everyone and always very lively and chatty. And me on Twitter, well, let's just do that. Let's just do the Linux for Everyone social page because it's all on there. So that's the best way to connect.
Great, thank you.
Or, I'll give you my email too. It's linuxforeveryone@pm.me. The PM is for Proton Mail. So linuxforeveryone@pm.me. If you want to talk about anything, just shoot me an email.
Fantastic. Fatima, thank you for joining us the first week here. Look forward to having you on 3 more times. How could people reach you?
Twitter, Sugar Overflow.
Fantastic. How about
I
you,
thought
Nick?
this was Talking
Adding
Drupal, but I
you
think it was
right
Talking
now.
Linux today. So thanks for having me.
Yes.
Like I said, my plan is working.
How about you, Nick?
You can reach me everywhere at NixVan, NICXVAN.
And John.
I'm John Picozzi. You can find me on all the major social networks and Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And as always, Oomph is hiring. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, go to oomphinc.com.
And I'm Stephen Cross. You can find me stephencross.com. That's with a PH.
And as always, if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
See you guys.
That's for sure.
See you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Toodaloo.
Bye.